Hi, I'm Shelby Hartman, DoubleBlind's co-founder.
And I'm Mary Carreón, DoubleBlind's editor-in-chief.
And we're going to talk to you today about doing ayahuasca for the first time. This is a very big topic and one that we are not going to be able to cover comprehensively in a single YouTube video. So I want to just start out by saying that. But I know that a lot of people have this question or this curiosity around ayahuasca because there's been a lot of conversation about it. A lot of celebrities have come out. Will Smith, Chelsea Handler, Miley Cyrus.
So many
Celebrities have come out and said, like, this changed my life. Joe Rogan has talked about it a bunch on his podcast. And it's also just kind of like this mysterious thing that I think people are curious about, especially if they've done a psychedelic before. But they don't really know, like, it feels scary. They don't know where to start. They don't know where to look. They don't know if they're ready. And so we're going to talk about some of those things today.
So, Shelby, I have to ask you, how do you know if you're ready for ayahuasca?
Whew.
I know that's a big question.
It's a big question.
Yeah.
Well, I want to say how you know you're ready for ayahuasca is similar to how you know you are ready for any psychedelic experience. Mm-hmm. First, it has to begin with a genuine call. What is a genuine call to a psychedelic? Well, let me ask you, how do you know when you are ready to do a psychedelic?
Usually there's interest, first of all. There's curiosity and interest for me. And often there's a question of some kind that kind of comes to me and is impossible to ignore. Or there is something that I am trying to have a new perspective on altogether. And often that could be a situation that I've gone through, a traumatic event that I also have some distance from, that I'm not like currently in the throes of the pain and grief. Or a relationship gone awry or something like that. I've had friendships in the past kind of deteriorate, and after getting through the pain of that, needing a new perspective on either how I could have been better, the situation at large, and also forgiveness, working through what forgiveness means, etc. So that's an example of kind of things that have come to me and the things that occur before engaging with a psychedelic.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly it. It's very hard to articulate because it's a very personal and private experience, right? It's something that you're going to feel within. You're going to learn about something and you're just going to feel like, this is something I want to learn more about, or this is something that I feel might be right for me. And that's where it begins.
Yeah.
And I say that especially because sometimes people have friends, it's not uncommon, that are very excited about psychedelics, especially friends or family members or whatever it might be, especially ayahuasca. Ayahuasca is the kind of medicine where oftentimes people will go and they come back, they're like, oh my God, I feel like I was exfoliated from the inside out. I was made brand new. You gotta try the stuff. And it's like, whoa, horsey, it's cool. It's amazing if your friend went and had some life-changing experience and now they want you to come and sit with their shaman.
Yeah.
But is that what you want? Is it the right moment in your life for it? And I think with all psychedelics, you have to ask, is it the right moment? And I think what you said about, wanting to process something that happened to you that was traumatic or grief-filled, but not being in the throes of it, right?
Yes.
Having a little bit of distance from it.
Yes.
I think that is actually really profound, right? And so when you're asking, is it the right moment for me? Some things you want to be thinking about are, what is going on? What is your entire life looking like at this moment? What do you do when you get up in the morning? What is expected of you? How do you feel? You know, are you going through a divorce? Are you currently unhoused? Are you currently unemployed? Are you currently anything that, if anything is happening in your life that is creating like a deep sense of instability, probably not the right time to do a psychedelic, but especially not the right time to do ayahuasca.
Correct.
Because one of the things that Deanna Rogers, who's one of DoubleBlind's resident facilitators, always says, who trained under Gabor Mate and worked at the Temple of the Way of Light for many years, which is an amazing ayahuasca retreat center outside of Iquitos, Peru, is that when you do ayahuasca, you have to be ready for your life to fall apart, essentially, for things to get harder before they get better. Now, that doesn't always happen. Like with every other psychedelic, anything under the sun is possible, and I mean anything.
Truly.
So sometimes people go to an ayahuasca ceremony, and guess what happens? Nothing.
Right.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah,
Literally.
I've heard
They drink
that.
a cup of ayahuasca, and they're like, and everyone else around them seems to be having really profound experiences, and they're
Yes.
like, why am I not feeling anything? So they go
Yes.
back. They drink another cup of ayahuasca. Nothing happens. They drink another cup of ayahuasca. Nothing happens. And then they leave the ceremony going, I don't get it. Was I duped? Was everyone else pretending? What's wrong with me?
Yes.
And so, and other times, you know, people go, they have what they think is going to be a small dose. They say to
Yes.
the facilitator, I'm really sensitive. Please give me, you know, half a cup or whatever. That's how they measure doses, is in cups. Usually they use this like basically a shot glass, which is an ounce, to measure dosage. And so you'll get a third of a cup or half a cup or something like that. And it's like your whole world is blown open. The stars, the moon, the sun, God, everything's one, or you're in the depths of hell, or anything can happen, right? And you emerge from the experience with a lot to process and a lot to make sense of. And sometimes, you know, feeling like you have to make some pretty profound changes to your life. It could be as simple as, I really need to stop watching so much television and I need to exercise more. And it could be as, you know, kind of extreme or intense as like, I need to leave my partner. I need to leave my job. Yes. I need to move cities. I need to spend more time with my dying parent. Like whatever it might be, right? So just really being prepared for that and knowing that if you're at a place in your life where there's like, you don't have the space to even really think straight, and it's sad, but so many of us are there, right?
Absolutely.
You're deeply, deeply burned out. You're at a job that you have to be at again. You know, if you have to be on Slack Monday at 8 a.m.
Yeah.
Don't go to an ayahuasca ceremony and, you know, feel like your whole world has been turned upside down if you have to be on Slack at 8 a.m. on Monday. I mean, you gotta at least give yourself and be able to give yourself 2 or 3 days of doing absolutely nothing after the ceremony ends, of going into nature, getting a massage, if that's something that your facilitator permits, because some facilitators don't allow for touch a week or two after the ceremony. But relaxing, going to the beach, whatever it is, journaling, integrating, etc.
Sure.
Important on all psychedelics, but especially ayahuasca.
Yeah, yes. You know, it's interesting too, because isn't there a whole protocol prior to consuming ayahuasca, which can potentially derail someone's work schedule ahead of a ayahuasca experience. So the ayahuasca experience actually begins, what, a week or so prior to ceremony?
It depends on the facilitator. Firstly, I just want to give a shout out to this beautiful thing right here, which is DoubleBlind's first book and also my first book, which was co-authored with DoubleBlind's other co-founder, Madison Margolin. And there's a whole chapter in here on ayahuasca, as well as other drugs to help you engage with psychedelics in a good way and integrate your experiences and all the rest. Yes, so it's called the Dieta.
Yes.
And the Dieta is essentially a cleanse that you go on before and after your ayahuasca journey. And there's so much, we break this down in the book because it's overwhelming. There's so much information online about the Dieta. And, but generally the idea is that before you do ayahuasca, you want to cut things out of your life that create noise in your mind, body, and spirit. So that includes foods that are really sort of energetically upsetting, like usually they'll say no pork, no processed foods. You don't want to eat lots of salt.
Sugar.
Yeah, you just don't want to, like, you just want to take care of yourself, right? So that you're kind of like a clear channel for the medicine to come into.
Yeah, I was going to say a lot of people tend to go like raw vegan or vegan ahead of time. And that also is something that's recommended.
Yeah. But every facilitator will be
different.
Completely different.
Yeah.
So if you're going to a retreat center in the Amazon, they might tell you, like, you need to be on this really strict diet 2 weeks before and 2 weeks after. If you're going to like a Western facilitator that's serving medicine underground in the United States, they might say a week. They might say 3 days. They might, give you a very short list of things and just say, generally be mindful. Is that going to disrupt your life before the ceremony? Well, it kind of depends on who.
Exactly.
Kind of depends on who you are.
Exactly.
If you're someone that already eats pretty healthy, and you don't drink a lot of alcohol, you don't smoke a lot of weed, you don't watch a lot of television, and basically, okay, so you're gonna cut out pork for a couple weeks, like no big deal. If you're someone that relies on a lot of things that they're gonna tell you to cut out of your life, and coffee is usually the biggest one for people, especially when they're trying to work. Then you're gonna need that time.
Totally. That's a difficult one for me. Cutting out coffee. I am like obsessed with coffee in every way that one could possibly be.
I'm also obsessed with coffee.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. It's one of life's greatest pleasures. It's delicious. Yeah. So yeah, that's difficult. Also, that brings in obviously teas with caffeine. That brings in all caffeine.
It depends on the facilitator, but
okay. What it also brings in is phone time, screen time,
yes.
doom scrolling. That's really bad for your energy.
Right. Absolutely. That's the thing, is that you want it. That's in order to be this clear channel, right? To clear out that noise. It's really about anything that sort of is distracting or numbing. So that can be, of course, alcohol, coffee, processed foods, but also if you're at a job where all day long you're on your computer screen, and then when you get off of work, you feel like a zombie. And trust me, I have been there. I know Mary has been there, because we're journalists, and sometimes we have to spend a lot of time on our screens, and it's a constant practice of trying to be mindful around that.
Yeah, of just getting off of the phone. My God, it's so hard because our jobs involve being on our phones, on our screens, on our computers, any screen ever for all day.
Right.
All day.
Yeah, but I will say that you really notice a difference during the ceremony between depending upon how devoted you are and how much time and space you have to give to the preparation before you go into the ceremony. So like one of the things that a dear friend of mine says, who has been a guardian for a long time in ayahuasca ceremonies, is the medicine's not going to punish you, okay? If you have a burger with bacon on it before your ceremony, you're not going to like have a bad trip because like grandmother ayahuasca is mad at you. That's not going to happen. But I'm serious, because people get really spooked.
No,
They're
totally.
like, oh my God.
Totally.
I put a little bit of
ketchup.
I put a little ketchup on my vegan patty.
Sandwich.
But it's just about the intention.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. That makes sense. Also, if you are someone like us who has to be on the computer, or if you're a social media manager and you are required for your job to be on your phone all day every day, you shouldn't stop your job. If you can take some time off, yes, do it. But if if it's like between 9 and 5 that you must be on your phone, and then you can schedule things out, then do that, if that makes sense. Like, you should be working with your schedule. You don't have to completely upend everything.
Right.
It doesn't have to be some crazy detox from everything that the modern world has presented us with.
Totally. I think it's just about being honest with yourself about where you're at and doing the best that you can.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, if you feel really called to an ayahuasca ceremony, I don't want to say don't go because you can't take, a week in the forest before and afterwards where you do nothing but eat vegan food and drink tea. Like, it's just not realistic in the day and age where we're living. But I can tell you from personal experience that if you don't at least book a little bit of time for yourself after, it's just very jarring. It's like you're getting thrown back into the belly of the beast.
Yes. And, it's kind of like that with most, especially ayahuasca, but with most ceremonies, most plant medicine ceremonies, or even psychedelic therapy can be like that. Even, it's much different, but even ketamine therapy, when you go to if you go to a clinic and then you get like an intramuscular injection, for instance, or you do an IV drip or something where you're going to have an intense ketamine experience, going home and then the next day going to work is not realistic. You're not going to get anything done. There's no way. So what you should be doing is experiencing that openness and that glow that you have, and working with that and writing, journaling, yoga, integrating that experience.
I want to talk for a moment about the different options that people have for the types of ayahuasca experiences that they can have if they're feeling called to do this, because there's a lot that's out there right now. So just kind of as an overview, there's retreat centers abroad that are legal. The most common places you'll find ayahuasca retreat centers are in the Amazon, and also in Peru and Colombia mostly, and also in Costa Rica. And then there are actually a couple of Brazilian ayahuasca churches that have gotten varying degrees of exemption from federal and state governments to quasi-legally serve ayahuasca in the United States. So the UDV, the União de Vegetal, has gotten the full go-ahead at a federal level, whereas Santo Daime
also has.
At the federal level too?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
I thought that they had just received some state exemptions.
No, they have, both of the churches that you just named have a full exemption from the Controlled Substances Act. So they have been granted essentially what is like a DEA license, kind of, to serve for religious purposes.
Oh, well, what do I know? This is why she's the editor-in-chief now. And then there was the Church of Condor and Eagle that got an exemption. Do they serve ayahuasca?
Yes, and they also just received their DEA exemption as well.
Gotcha.
Yes. So yeah, there is the Native American Church as well.
But they do peyote.
They do peyote, yes. And there's a couple others, I believe, now. But those are the ones that I can just name off the top of my head.
Right. Yeah. So what I would love for you actually to talk about this a little bit, because Mary is an amazing journalist, y'all. She's a really, really amazing journalist. Like, thanks, you Shelby. Might see her as an editor of DoubleBlind, but she's also reported some incredibly complex stories, including one that you did for us a couple years ago for the print magazine on the Religious Freedom Restoration Act and churches that are seeking federal exemption to be able to serve psychedelics legally. And I guess what we discovered is that there are a few churches, like the ones you named, that have really actually gone through that process, gotten that federal exemption, but there's a lot of others. So can you just for a moment talk about kind of like the quasi-legal, probably not actually legal, like psychedelic church, ayahuasca church landscape in the United States? Sure.
So the only legal churches in the United States right now that are able to legally, through the DEA exempt, Controlled Substances Act exempt, that are able to serve plant medicine are ayahuasca churches, and it's the ones that we have just previously talked about.
And the Native American Church
and the Native American Church for peyote. And there is maybe one more in, I want to say Washington or Oregon, that also just recently received their religious exemption from the Controlled Substances Act. However, there are many other churches that, you know, work with mushrooms, that work with other plant medicines, or work with other compounds that are that also claim that they are working with these substances for religious use and are claiming religious use, but they do not have DEA exempt permissions to facilitate those medicines. So while they claim religious use and they say that that is what they are doing, the DEA doesn't recognize it as such. So right now, currently, the only medicines that are legally facilitated are ayahuasca through ayahuasca churches in the United States. Everything else, including mushrooms, including LSD, including 5-MeO DMT, including anything else, is not seen by the DEA as legal. So that's a distinction. So if you go to those churches, it's probably not legal.
Right. And even if you go to a church, an ayahuasca church, that I put it in quotes because the level of sincerity is really what the DEA is looking at. They actually use that word, sincerity, that they want to know that this is truly a sacrament for the community and that they're not just like basically just like, you know, selling or serving drugs and saying, well, this is a sacrament. Show us. We need to see your religious text. We need to see the history, the historical use of this sacrament among your community, et cetera, et cetera.
And it's interesting. Sorry.
That's okay.
Go.
Well, I was going to say that there are ayahuasca churches in the U.S. that have not been exempt. So just because it's a church serving ayahuasca, there was one in particular that was there was a lot of, you know...
They were in Florida.
Yeah, Soul Quest, right? Yes. Was I not supposed to mention that?
I don't know.
It's fine. We reported on it.
We did report on it. And also, we reported on it, and also they are no longer in existence.
I see. And you just gotta be careful. And, you know, and it is pretty complicated in terms of what's going on with the legal landscape.
It is.
So if you're a person that's like, you know what? I just would rather go to the Temple of the Way of Light in Brazil or, you know, Halos in Costa Rica, or I'm trying to think of the names of other places we've endorsed in the past. We have lists on our website. Just do that. Also, though, you know, I would say the downside of traveling to have a psychedelic experience is, firstly, it's going to be more expensive. Yes. You know, you are flying to another country and usually have to take more time off work. A lot of times these retreats are, you know, 5-7 days, something like that. And it's usually just more of a commitment.
It's usually an all-inclusive kind of idea, and you spend around $2,000, $3,000, $5,000. You know, it depends. It depends on where you go. It depends on what kind of service you're getting ultimately.
Right.
Yeah.
Some of them are like luxury hotels, and they're designed for Westerners, and they have massage therapists and yoga and all kinds of stuff. And others are much more kind of
in the jungle.
Yeah, they're in the jungle. They're in the jungle. You're going to take a bus to a boat, and you're going to walk with all your stuff, and you're going to show up at a little casita that has a compost toilet, and that's where you're going to be, kind of thing. Which I've done, and was wild.
I bet.
I bet. And I also want to say, you know, if you're going abroad, equally important to vet your ayahuasca facilitator retreat center, because if not more, because there's sadly been cases of sexual assault and all kinds of really messed up stuff that's going on,
etc.
You know, if you buy a flight or you're backpacking around and you somehow find yourself in Iquitos, Peru, or Pucallpa, what you will see people offering, they'll be like, oh yeah, come to my ceremony. Don't do ayahuasca that way. Don't do any psychedelic that way. You'll find the same thing with shrooms.
It's like walking down
Mexico.
It's like walking down the Venice Beach boardwalk and seeing a sign that says buy shrooms here. Don't do it.
Don't buy shrooms here.
Yeah, don't.
Buy shrooms elsewhere.
Yeah, elsewhere.
And so we covered retreats, we covered churches.
Yeah.
And I also want to talk about underground facilitation for a moment.
Sure.
which, like with everything else, vetting, and you're going to find mostly in the US, you'll find a combination of Western facilitators. What I mean by that is someone who does not have a ancestral tie to ayahuasca, who did not grow up in a community where ayahuasca was around them and all their aunties and uncles were doing ayahuasca, someone who discovered it as an adult and went on a path to build a relationship with that medicine. And a lot of times those people live in the US, they get the medicine from either the Amazon or a variety of places. And they serve underground, and usually it's going to be in a house or something like that, and you would find that person via a referral or an indigenous person who travels from the Amazon to the US and is serving medicine here. So I think at the end of the day, you just have to ask yourself what your priorities are. I think I could speak for myself and say that it was beautiful going to the Amazon and sitting with 5 Shipibo elder maestras who grew up around these traditions. And it's also really nice to be able to pack a duffel bag, drive to my ayahuasca ceremony, do ayahuasca for the weekend, come home and sleep in my own bed.
Totally. And there is space for both, and you should probably experience both at some point in your life. If you are somebody who lives in Los Angeles or lives stateside and you have heard about these wild experiences in the jungle, you should, go do it. But, it doesn't have to be right now. It doesn't have to be the only way that you do ayahuasca.
Absolutely. It's not the only way. And I think it can be really nice to start by doing it closer to home.
Yes.
But only if you can find someone that you really trust to do it in a good way. Otherwise, you should just be going to a vetted retreat center.
I agree 1,000%. Also, it's not, if you are going to someone who isn't going to facilitate safely because you are rushing to the experience because you just want to try ayahuasca for the first time, just take a beat. If you are feeling that anxiety to get it and do it, sit with that for a second and kind of sit with what that is and what that means and why you are feeling so rushed to go do it.
Right.
There's probably something in there for you to marinate on.
It's my sense that a lot of people feel called to do ayahuasca because they've tried other psychedelics and they haven't had that sort of life-changing, I have no suffering, my whole life is transformed moment, right? And they're like, well, maybe ayahuasca's gonna do it for me. And unfortunately, what I have to tell you is that there is no magic bullet. No single psychedelic, no single experience on planet Earth is going to make a whole person's life transform and all of their suffering go away permanently. Buddha figured that one out a long time ago. These are all just tools. And we cultivate relationships. If you believe in the sort of animist indigenous perspective around plant medicines, you're not just consuming the plant, but you're actually cultivating a relationship with the spirit of the plant. So if you're feeling a call, maybe that call, if you believe in this kind of thing, is the spirit of the plant beckoning you, saying, you're ready, it's time. And trusting that and following it all the way to the experience and all the way through to the end. People report that ayahuasca gives them a completely new understanding of plant intelligence. All indigenous communities that have relationships with psychoactive plants believe in animism, believe that these plants are intelligent, believe that they have intentionality, believe that they have spirits. Same goes for mushrooms. But sometimes, for whatever reason it might be, it can be harder for people to really feel like they're connecting with the spirit of the mushroom. But there's something really unique about ayahuasca where it really feels like there's a voice or a spirit that kind of reaches through from other dimensions and speaks to you and communicates with you and shifts things and moves things in a way that other psychedelics don't always do. And so you can emerge from that experience saying like, wow, I get it now. And you can actually take that into other psychedelic experiences. So after doing ayahuasca, it's like the mushrooms became more alive, the cannabis became more alive, the tea became more alive.
I love that.
Right?
I
and
love
so it
that.
can be really beautiful. It can be a beautiful way of understanding and knowing and building relationship. But it's not an experience to be taken lightly.
Everything that you just said was so beautiful. You were really cooking right there. I really love that. Yes to all of this. And I also don't think that it's something to take lightly. And I think that I actually wish that more people would be more intentional about their use, specifically around ayahuasca, because it is such a reverent thing. And it comes from a really sacred and sensitive cultures, sacred cultures,
yes.
Parts of the world that also deserve so much more respect than I think that many of us give it, because we're on this hunt for enlightenment through psychedelics.
Yes.
And we're just like looking for that tea or that magic pill or whatever to like make us feel better at large, whether that's mental health better or make us feel better about our burnout or make us feel better about the things that we've done that we don't feel good about, you know, and everybody has these things, you know, it's not just certain types of people, but, you know, these are reasons why people forget that the medicine is actually tied to a part of the world and a culture and certain rituals that deserve a lot of respect. And so I say all of this just to tell everyone to slow down with the ayahuasca, because ultimately it is in danger of eventual extinction in its natural place, in its natural form, and it's in that part of the world in the forest. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. And we have other videos on DoubleBlind and in our articles about what we refer to as the concept of indigenous reciprocity, stewardship. And essentially this is about coming into what we say is right relationship with plant medicines, that they're not something we're just consuming for our own benefit to just heal our depression and get right back to work. But that they are these sort of ancient technologies that have a storied use. And so a big way that you make sure that the ayahuasca itself, as Mary was referencing, the vine, the plant, is being sourced in a good way, in a sustainable way, and also that the medicine is being served with reverence, is by asking those questions of your facilitator, especially if they're a Western facilitator, right? Like, where is the ayahuasca coming from? Where did you train? Who are your teachers? How are you giving back? Right?
Yes.
And even looking for things like sliding scale options, right? Because ayahuasca has become, in some ways, a medicine that's only accessible to people who really have access to enormous amounts of capital,
money.
right?
Yeah.
And I think that someone who is in right relationship with ayahuasca is going to want to make ayahuasca accessible to all kinds of people.
Thank you.
So offering some kind of sliding scale or scholarships option, if they're saying, well, it's $1,000 for the weekend, and if you can't PayPal me now, like shit out of luck, I mean, it's probably not your facilitator.
No, definitely not. And again, especially with the Western facilitators or people who are Western folks who are serving down in the Amazon or Costa Rica, you want to make sure that they are asking you the right questions. You want to make sure that you're not going to a one-day retreat, probably. You want to make sure that you're going to a multiple day retreat because, again, like Shelby was saying, you need multiple days on the back end to digest everything that just happened to you. Because you're going to come out of that experience like, wait a second. What? Excuse me? What just happened? And a lot of psychedelics are like that. You come out of the experience like, okay, I gotta like piece some things back together, or I need to reflect on how that made me feel at that one point during my experience, or like, why was I thinking so deeply about this snake, or whatever it possibly could be. I don't know. Or
why was I thinking so deeply about that snake?
You know, I don't know, but like these are things that come up. Like the weirdest things come up, but they also do, or they can mean something.
Yeah. As mentioned before, there's no possible way we could cover everything you need to know about ayahuasca in one video. So if you want to learn more, again, I do invite you to purchase the new coffee table book that DoubleBlind put out. It's available for pre-order. Also, if you become a member of DoubleBlind, you get access to all of our workshops and our courses and a copy of the book. So we will put all of that information in the description of this video. And also, if you want more videos like this, be sure to like and subscribe.